Bien, bienvenue à toutes et à tous pour cette cérémonie de parrainage, enfin de marrainage de votre promotion, puisque c'est une grande première. Nous avons pour la première fois une marraine comme ange gardien pour vous. Donc on va vous expliquer un petit peu la façon dont ça va se passer ce soir. Juste avant, je souhaite vous présenter un outil qui devrait théoriquement vous servir dans le futur pour vos études. Donc voilà, c'est le lancement officiel du site internet des anciens étudiants de l'IAE, sur lequel vous pourrez commencer. Alors il faut juste que je me logue. Et comme rien n'est exact en management, vous avez eu l'illustration qu'on peut très bien aussi se tromper sur l'orthographe de son nom de famille. Donc normalement, alors ça tourne un petit peu lentement parce que le site n'est pas encore publié. On est en train de mettre du contenu, puis on est en train de vérifier un certain nombre de choses pour que vous ayez un accès plus facile et un maximum de choses à voir. Donc il ressemblera un petit peu au site de l'école, au moins dans la charte graphique. Et je tiens à remercier publiquement les gens de la DOSI, de la direction informatique, qui ont fait des miracles pour qu'on puisse ce soir vous présenter ce site-là, puisque votre marraine est une alumni aussi, et donc c'était l'occasion de faire d'une pierre deux coups. Et cet aspect très symbolique de la chose vous permettra désormais d'accéder plus facilement pour votre carrière. On est en train de créer un petit hub spécifique à l'IAE dans UCA Pro. Vous pourrez déposer votre... Les entreprises pourront y mettre des offres de stage, des offres d'emploi. Vous pourrez y déposer à terme des petites vidéos de présentation de vous-même pour pouvoir essayer d'intéresser les entreprises. Celles-ci pourront vous mettre aussi des vidéos et des teasings pour vous donner envie d'aller chez elles. On pourra y mettre aussi des images, des photos, des événements des alumni organisés par et pour les alumni. Ça, c'est le premier volet. Vous aurez tout un petit volet actualité dans lequel vous pourrez y retrouver la vie de l'école. Vous allez avoir sur les télés affiché un certain nombre de conférences. Toutes ces conférences-là sont organisées par les étudiants en Master 1 Management Stratégique dans le cadre de leur maquette. Et vous avez les thématiques. Donc ces thématiques-là, vous pouvez les suivre si vous le souhaitez et si vous êtes libre à partir de l'IAE. Et puis vous avez aussi tous les autres événements à venir au niveau de l'école, comme les futurs événements type soirée des anciens qui sont organisés tous les 2 ans, cérémonie de remise des diplômes et soirée des diplômés. Vous avez également accès à l'annuaire. Donc moi, si je me connecte, j'aurai en tant que responsable de formation les étudiants de ma promotion. Donc je passe vite parce qu'il y en a certains qui n'ont pas des photos vraiment à leur avantage. Voilà. Au niveau de la partie réseau, ça tourne. Hein. Au niveau de la partie réseau, vous serez connectés, on est en train d'étoffer ça au fur et à mesure. Le réseau Pépite pour les futurs créateurs d'entreprises, des réseaux d'aide, il peut y avoir des réseaux d'aide au niveau social, il peut y avoir des réseaux sur des clubs d'entrepreneurs, il y a des réseaux aussi qui peuvent être initiés via les réseaux sociaux, donc on va essayer de relayer intelligemment tout ça. Vous avez aussi accès à la chaîne YouTube de l'école, sur laquelle pourront être revisionnées la cérémonie de parrainage, de marrainage, les conférences ou les événements. Et puis vous avez aussi donc, le petit traditionnel mot qui sommes-nous et pourquoi on fait ça. Et puis un accès à tous nos partenaires. Si vous rencontrez des entreprises qui disent « Ah, votre école m'intéresse, on voudrait bien vous aider », vous leur dites « Allez, donnez-nous un peu d'argent ». On donne ça à l'école, on peut mettre ça dans le BDE aussi qui fait des efforts extraordinaires depuis maintenant 2 ans pour vous mettre une vie étudiante. Et là, je pense qu'il faut aussi les remercier, les féliciter et les encourager. Et donc, en échange, on les affiche. Hein. Alors, les petits donateurs, on les met dans le menu. Les gros donateurs, on les mettra carrément sur la page du site. Puisqu'on est une école, on fait du management et un peu de business, on va essayer de montrer qu'on est capable aussi de mettre tout ça en valeur. Donc, voilà un petit peu le site et puis les avantages qu'ils vous procureront. Donc, je vous invite toutes et tous, désormais, à vous inscrire sur UCA Pro, à vérifier aussi que vous avez mis coordonnées mail et téléphone orthographiées et écrits correctement pour qu'on puisse vous joindre. Et vous aurez dès le mois de décembre, début janvier au plus tard, accès à toutes ces rubriques en priorité. Voilà. Et on a décidé aussi que, comme on n'était quand même pas non plus trop sectaire, les offres d'emploi qui seraient proposées, qui ne seraient pas pourvues par les étudiants de l'IAE dans un premier temps, rebasculeraient sur UCA Pro en général, mais on a aussi l'avantage et la primeur de ces choses-là. Voilà donc pour l'aspect un petit peu futuriste qui vous concerne. Maintenant, il va être temps de donner la parole au directeur. Il va vous faire un petit speech inaugural dont il a le secret. Voilà, donc j'invite M. Talbot à venir nous introduire la cérémonie officiellement.
Merci François. J'en profite avant de faire mon petit speech. Tu as remercié les services centraux. Moi, j'en profite pour te remercier toi personnellement. Bah si, parce que le site Alumni, pour qu'il soit lancé ce soir, a demandé un travail considérable. Ça a été souligné par la DOSI, mais aussi par François. Et il est aussi à l'origine de cette soirée. C'est lui qui a suggéré notre marraine. Donc, véritablement, on te remercie tous pour ce que tu as fait, ce que tu fais et ce que tu vas faire, du coup. Ouais. Chère Daria, c'est un grand honneur, une grande fierté pour l'IAE Clermont Auvergne School of Management de vous accueillir dans nos superbes locaux. Alors c'est un honneur et une fierté à plus d'un titre. D'abord, vous représentez une réussite professionnelle incontestable. Vous allez nous décrire dans les minutes qui suivent votre parcours. Vous êtes Senior Product Manager chez Genentech et vous êtes en particulier en charge du marketing dans le domaine de l'hématologie. Vous allez nous expliquer tout ça en détail. Vous allez aussi dévoiler votre parcours très international, qui pour nous est un exemple. Vous êtes roumaine, donc vous avez obtenu un diplôme à l'université de Bucarest, puis auprès aussi de quelques universités peu connues, la Sorbonne, Harvard, Stanford. Mais tout ça n'est pas vraiment important parce que le diplôme qui compte le plus, vous l'avez compris, c'est celui que vous avez obtenu au sein de l'IUP Management et Gestion des Entreprises, maintenant qui a fusionné pour créer l'IAE, Clermont-Auvergne. Donc vous êtes, François l'a souligné, une alumni, une ancienne étudiante de l'IAE. Et c'est à ce titre qu'on a souhaité que vous soyez notre marraine, car vous représentez pour nos étudiants le champ des possibles, qui est infini, puisque vous avez fait vos études en Europe, vous exercez professionnellement aux États-Unis, à San Francisco. Vous allez dans quelques instants vous adresser à nos étudiants présents ce soir. Et donc, vous allez leur témoigner toute la confiance que vous avez en eux. Et c'est extrêmement important pour eux. De notre point de vue, nos étudiants sont dotés de 3 qualités essentielles, au moins. Et ces qualités vont être essentielles pour réussir une vie professionnelle au moins aussi riche que la vôtre. Premièrement, leur savoir-être dans les relations avec les autres. Ce sont, là, les employeurs qui nous le disent. C'est pas moi. Savoir-être qui, d'ailleurs, vous exercez avec l'équipe administrative. Et l'équipe administrative passe beaucoup de temps à faire en sorte qu'il soit pérenne. Donc ce comportement-là, votre présence à un test ce soir, il faut le conserver. C'est véritablement une capacité d'adaptation qui sera très utile pour vous. Vous êtes aussi autonome. Vous êtes autonome dans l'organisation de votre travail et dans votre capacité à prendre des responsabilités. Et les nouveaux métiers qui vont s'offrir à vous vont vous obliger à développer encore cette autonomie. Donc c'est un deuxième atout extrêmement important. Et puis, le troisième atout, c'est que vous êtes doté d'une forte capacité analytique liée à l'exigence d'un diplôme universitaire et liée aussi à la qualité des enseignants-chercheurs qui vous encadrent, car ce sont des enseignants-chercheurs de haut niveau. Voilà, je m'arrête là. Je vais passer la parole à Daria. Merci d'avoir traversé un continent, un océan, pour venir nous donner, à nous et à toute l'équipe de l'IAE, un bel élan.
Merci et bonsoir à tous. Je suis très contente d'être avec vous ce soir. Et comme Monsieur Cassier m'a contacté pour me demander si je voudrais être votre marraine, j'ai accepté tout de suite et j'en suis extrêmement honorée et contente d'être avec vous ce soir. En fait, je pense que vous avez de la chance d'être étudiant de cette université qui est assez ouverte à l'international et aussi aux femmes. Car pour moi, j'ai fini mes études, ça fait longtemps, et vous voyez, mon français, je l'ai perdu un petit peu. Et je sais que vous étudiez business et management. Et alors, on va parler en anglais ce soir, un petit peu, mais vos questions, vous pouvez me poser des questions en français et ça marche pour moi. Mais je vais répondre en anglais. Okay. So, how many of you, show of hands, how many of you know what a journey line is? Good. It's good because I'm introducing new topics. So, the journey line, it is what it sounds like. It's your life is a journey. Ooh, we're good. Okay, your life is a journey. And the journey line is like, your life is like a line, but of course it's not always a line. Like it can be a zigzaggy, it can be like a circle. But it's really like a metaphor for, this is like the story of your life. And how do you tell the story of your life? And at my company, every time we go into a new team, we use the journey line to make sure that our colleagues know about us. So it's basically telling you a little bit about myself. And I want this to be an interactive presentation. So I have very few slides. I have some pictures. But I would love for you to ask me questions along the way. And at the end, we also have some time for questions as well. Good? Okay, so a little bit about myself. As you heard, I'm from Romania, a small country in Eastern Europe, and that's where I was born, and that's where I grew up for, a long time in my life. And then I moved around a little bit, so talking a little bit about my international trajectory, I worked and I studied in multiple countries, first in Europe, and actually coming here at Clermont like 1 month every year was a big part of it. And then I lived in Paris for a year when I did my Sorbonne studies, and I'll tell you a bit about that. And then I came back to Romania for my first job after school. And then I went to Boston for my MBA studies. And then I did an internship in Switzerland. And then I went back to Boston, and now I'm in San Francisco. So as you can see, like many different countries and different continents as well. But you know, the place where you were born and your home country, the place where your family is from, that's still a big part of my life. And we'll talk a little bit about family and you know what family means for us and how family is your support structure along the way. So because I was almost sure that you probably don't know much about Romania, or you know some things that are like maybe from the news. But I wanna tell you about the beautiful part of Romania and how I think about my home country. So we have Vlad the Impaler, and that's a big joke because in the US, many people really don't know anything about Romania, but they know about Dracula, and then they can't believe that Dracula was actually a real person, but we don't call him Dracula, we call him Vlad the Impaler, and it was one of our biggest rulers. So that's fun to get to tell the story. And then we have beautiful castles and fortresses, which I know France has a lot of as well. But you know, it's like they're really nice and they're still there, and you can still visit them. And I was, as I was talking to Monsieur Cassier here, he knows very well the Romanian cuisine. We like to eat a lot. I didn't say anything. I didn't say Monsieur Cassier likes to eat. I said Romanians like to eat a lot. But this is, I don't know if you've ever heard of this. This is called sarmale, and it's like, it's polenta with like ground meat wrapped in cabbage. It's really good. It's one of my favorite Romanian dishes. And then we have nature. It's really nice, really beautiful. And we also have lots of traditions that we still go by, whether it's a wedding, ceremony, or just everyday life. We try to preserve our traditions. So that's Romania for you, from me, in a nutshell. And if you haven't visited, I encourage you to go. There are many low-cost flights to Romania, so go ahead and experience it for yourself, because the prices are still low compared to the rest of Europe, so it's a good place to have fun. Okay, so now transitioning to a few reflections of mine, and we'll spend a big portion of the presentation today discussing these reflections. So first I'll talk about them in a more like general fashion, and then I'll tell you how they apply to my life and my experiences. So the first one here, good things happen to those who work hard. You may know this from your own experience. Related to my experience here, so you know, like sometimes you may be lucky, you may have a good opportunity, or sometimes you don't need to work hard and you just get by. But in my experience, that doesn't happen very often. More often than not, you actually do have to work hard, and especially I think early in your life, it's really important to build a solid base of knowledge and really spend time investing in that. And I think the opportunity there is that at this age, in your early 20s, mid-20s, you actually have the time and you have the chance to do that, to invest in your education and invest in your future. So I think that's really important, and you're all lucky to have that chance. And then the good news here, it gets easier. At least for me, it did, and I'll tell you a little bit how. But what I mean for this is that, like the people that you meet at some point in your life, they can introduce you to other people, and then before you know it, there's just like an opportunity that arises that you didn't know that was there, or just the things that you learn from school. It's just they have the more you know, the more you learn, the more people you meet. Ultimately, it's all linked together, and you may not see all these connections and how they all come together from the beginning, but at some point they open up to you and you start connecting the dots. So I'll tell you how that worked in my case in the following slides. Education isn't a once and done. So obviously now you're at this time in your life, you actually spend a lot of time investing in education, and that's probably most of what you're doing right now, which is fine. But then later in life, there will be competing responsibilities, whether that's a job or family or aging parents or I don't know, many other things that that can happen in life. But I think what's important to acknowledge here is that education can come in many different forms. You know, it doesn't have to be you sitting in a bench listening to teachers like 8 hours a day. It can come, it's even during your job. Even if you have a job, education doesn't stop. It can be in the form of a training or workshop, coaching, mentorship, and if you, I think you are all gonna go and do some great things and work for some great companies that usually have development programs and people who care about the skills that you want to develop. So that's still learning. And it can also be a little bit more formal, with more formal programs of learning that are flexible enough that you can do them while you also have a job. So that's to say that focus now, get the education that you need, but know and that this is not the end of it, and that you should be open to learning throughout your life for the rest of your life. And then, okay, the fourth one, giving back along the way is good. I think, you know, like when you have a busy schedule and you're focused on what needs to get done, whether it's your like exams or job responsibilities, life can get pretty crazy and very, very busy. But I think what I found out for myself is that it's always really, really nice, and it feels very good to give back. And giving back can be in the form of anything. It can be you volunteering to cut the, I don't know, like clean the park, cut the trees, or it could be really, it could be what you learned in school. It could be some pro bono consulting project or advice that you're giving to your local community. But it's really giving back, because we are the fortunate ones who can actually do that. And it does good for the soul too. And then your family is your rock. So it's really your family, and I should add your friends too. But it's really that concept of having a support network in life, because things go well and then they don't go that well anymore, or something happens, or you need some advice, you need a shoulder to cry on. And that's always, I think it's a prerequisite for a successful, you know, like life and career. It's really to have that support network. And that doesn't just happen. It doesn't just happen one day. The support network of family and friends, you build it over a long period of time. So you keep adding to it, and you keep developing it, and then you tap into it. So these are my, really my simplified format, my advice of life that I wanted to give you. And I also have, to make it a little bit more tangible, I have some specific examples in which I'm going to represent each one of them. So let's see here. You heard a little bit about my my trajectory in life so far, and I wanted to share a little bit of it with you too. So here on the left side, you can see this was my time in Europe before I moved to the States, and you see like a lot of studying happening there. A lot of those were my undergrad studies in Romania. I studied economic international relations. And then I came here and I studied some more, and I loved it because it provided a different perspective of, I studied small and medium-sized enterprises management, so it was like very entrepreneurial. I loved it. And then I spent a year in Paris studying at Sorbonne, and I did international trade there. So really from age 18 to 22, 23, I just did a lot of studying and maybe some internships here and there. And then my first job, my first real like full-time job post-graduation was with a German strategy consulting company that's called Roland Berger Strategy Consultants. You may have heard of them. They're based out of Munich with offices all over the world, and it's one of the top strategy consulting companies and the only one of European origins, on par with McKinsey and Boston Consulting Group, but those are American companies. So I felt really lucky to be part of that company. It felt really nice. The environment was like a boutique. We were a few people in the office, in the Bucharest office, but then many people all over the world. So again, it was nice to be part of that network, broader network. And consulting, I don't know how much you know about consulting or if you've consulted before with different companies, but it kind of gives you exposure to many different industries. I worked a lot in energy, oil, and transportation, and retail, and healthcare, and I was working with very big multi-billion-dollar companies. And I was learning a lot of good skills like presentation skills, analytics, forecasting, market research. I was traveling a lot, surrounded by very smart young people, very ambitious, very determined. So I spent a lot of time doing that for the first 4 years post-graduation. That's what I did. And then there came a time when I was like, I just want to do something different, but I didn't know what, which you may be familiar with this feeling when you have you have options, but you don't really know what you want to do, and you want to make sure that you make the right decision. So what I thought to myself that a good step to take would be to do an MBA program, to go back to school, which is kind of, you'll see this has been happening in my life multiple times, going back to school or studying on top of other things that I was doing. So I applied to 2 MBA programs. I applied to London Business School and to Harvard Business School. I got into both of them, and then I chose Harvard because, I actually had never lived in the U.S. at that point, or I hadn't even traveled to U.S. At that point. But I thought it's a pretty cool opportunity and a great place to study business. So that's what I did. Then I moved to Boston for 2 years for my MBA program, which is a big investment. And you may have to make this decision at some point in your life. After you work for a while and you're an independent adult with a full-time job, and then going back to school. Going back to a full-time school for 2 years, that's a pretty big change. But I said to myself, this is the investment that I want to make and I need to make in my future, so I'm gonna do it. So I did that for 2 years, and then I did some internships in between, which is, it's always good to do internships to figure out what you want to do. That's when I did my 2 internships in Geneva and Basel with the World Health Organization in Geneva, and then with Novartis in Basel. And coming from consulting, I kind of knew that I liked healthcare, and then those internships kind of solidified that decision. So then after HBS, I went with another consulting company, but IMS Health. But at this time, it was more focused. It was a boutique life sciences, so healthcare consulting company. And that's interesting too, because, you know, I don't know if you heard this, but they say that you shouldn't make too many changes in your life. Like, you should only change a few things at a time. So that's what I said to myself then. I had not, that was my first job, like full-time job in the US, and I was also developing into a new industry, quite new, healthcare. So then I didn't want to change consulting. I was like, I know I used to be a consultant for 4 years, so it should be a smoother transition for me if I still go into consulting. So that's what I did with IMS Health, and that's how I moved to San Francisco, where I've been living ever since. And okay. And then, you know, one thing actually leads to another. And then Genentech was one of my biggest clients on the West Coast. And you may have heard of Genentech. Is actually 40 years ago, it used to be a startup, a biotechnology startup, and it grew a lot over the past 40 years. So now there are about 15,000 employees in the US. And in 2009, it got acquired by Roche, which is a Swiss company. So now it's kind of a US company with a Swiss mother company. So interesting combination. I knew they're super innovative, and if you can come tomorrow to Monsieur Cassier's class, you'll hear more about innovation at Genentech and Roche and how we think about this. So I knew I really wanted to work for them. So I joined them about 4 years ago. And then I guess the last thing on my slide here is my current education at Stanford, which I'm taking on top of my full-time job. And it's really, Stanford is also known for innovation. You may have heard of Silicon Valley and the many startups that come out of it, Uber, Lyft, Facebook, Google, all of that. So I thought, I'm interested in innovation. What better place to go than take some classes at Stanford? And the classes are about entrepreneurship and innovation. And I think, and I actually work with engineers a lot. So engineers who have never taken business classes, and they have brilliant ideas, and they are product engineers, and they love like coding and developing a product, whether it's a tangible product or a software, like an app, but they don't know much about business, or it so happens a lot of times. So it's really about partnering with these engineers and bringing those ideas to life and to the market. So that's, I'm passionate about that, and I think it's a really cool thing to do. So how does my previous slide match with this one? I wanted to give you some examples of what, so the first thing that I said on the previous slide was that you need to work hard. As you can see here, this is, it's a pretty busy slide, this one, and working hard. So I was talking about building that knowledge base early on. I did a lot of that early in my career, like all these universities here, and then Roland Berger was actually, it was a ton of work, consulting, traveling, working long hours, and I think, you should take advantage of this while you're young and energetic, because I must tell you that the energy is kind of goes down with time, and you don't realize it, but it's true. Like I don't think I could work those long hours anymore, but I'm happy I did it when I was in my early 20s. And then the other thing I said is that it gets easier. I think it does get easier, or at least it did for me, because things are very connected to each other. So for example, and this is, I may have come up with this story in my head, and it may not even be true, but bear with me, because I'll tell you how I think things get easier. So it all started here in Clermont-Ferrand, because there was a partnership between this university and my university in Bucharest, and that's how I ended up here, and that's how I studied, like I learned French, although it's not clear now that I still speak French, but I used to speak better French, and that's how I ended up here. And then that's how because I was able to speak French, that's how I started my studies at Sorbonne. And that's how I met one of my friends at Sorbonne, who was already working at Roland Berger, and she told me about what's consulting, what's strategy consulting, all of that, which is a huge industry. But if at that time I didn't know anything about it, and that's how I started my job there. And then at Roland Berger, not everyone, but a lot of my colleagues there were pursuing an MBA, which is not, it's not true for other companies, at least not in Romania and not at that time. So I was exposed to that, and many people around me were pursuing MBAs, which I thought that gave me the strength and the courage. I said to myself, I can also do that. And then I went to Harvard, and then and that opened up a lot of opportunities and possibilities for me of changing the industry and changing a continent and working somewhere completely new. And that's how I started at Genentech, and now I'm interested in innovation. So this is just an example to show you that things are kind of related to each other. And if you think about your journey line, each of your journey lines, you could potentially find connections as well of how one thing led to another, how you met a person who introduced you to another person who told you about a different opportunity, and everything is connected in life. And then, needless to say, my third reflection about education being a lifelong journey, as you can see from my example here, and I actually did it on purpose. I have my professional career at the bottom and then the universities at the top. It's just to show how they stack against each other, and that they can be done in parallel. I mean, it may not feel that way now, because now you're in that period where you invest like 100% in your education, but later in life, I think they can be done in parallel. And actually, one of the reasons why I pursued the studies at Stanford is one, because I have an amazing company that actually it's promoting this, and they have a budget for employee development, and this is part of it. But also because after 4 years of working in a company, and it's as I said, it's a very nice company, but I felt the need to go back into the academic environment and really like learn some, I mean, in the most simplified ways, like learn some structure, learn some frameworks. Of course, you learn a lot on the job, in your day-to-day job, but in your day-to-day job, you don't have time to think about stuff. You don't have time to think a lot. So I really wanted to get that academic structure, and I just felt the need for that. So maybe I'll stop here for a second, because I've been doing a lot of talking. I still have 2 reflections that I want to talk about, but if there are any questions right now, en français ou en anglais. Maybe I can answer related to what I just talked about or anything else.
Have you been that ambitious from the beginning, or it gets easier, as you said?
I think you should ask my mom about that because yes, I think so. Based on my, as far as I can remember, I think I've been very ambitious from the very beginning. And I mean, you can see it in different formats throughout life, but I do think that what I said, like the environment, the people that you're surrounded by, and then your experiences, kind of how they're connected to one another, I think that all helped. So I think it's like, there's like a certain level of how ambitious you are in a natural way, and then there's all these supporting forces that kind of lead to that.
Okay, thank you. And isn't it confusing to get your first job in a big company as Roland Berger?
If it was confusing? Yeah, I mean, it was very confusing. It was really hard. It was really hard, and I didn't know what I was doing. And because I think, so I mean, I did business studies all the way. But then I remember when they asked me to do my first forecast in an Excel model. I had never done that before. So it was confusing, and the stakes are high, right? Because you want to make a good impression. It's your first job, and you want to get like a good review and all of that. But you go through it and you learn a lot of things, and hopefully you have some good mentors. Some good people, colleagues, more experienced colleagues who can actually help you figure out stuff. But those, I think, out of my entire professional experience, I think the Roland Berger one was probably the most stressful. Not just because of the volume of work, but precisely because I was at the beginning of my career. But then at the end of I clearly remember that at the end of my 4 years at Roland Berger, I knew that I don't know how to do everything. Like, obviously, I was only like 25. I didn't know how to do everything, but it gave me the courage to know that I can figure it out. Like, I will get it done, and I think that was very important coming out of that. Thank you for your questions.
Hello. I wanted to know what pushed you to choose Harvard comparing to London Business School. It was the USA or the name, or what it was exactly?
So I think, I've been asking myself this question too over the years. I had friends who went to both Harvard as well as London Business School, and I knew they were all very good. They were both very good options, and I couldn't have gone wrong with any of the two. But it was related to having a completely different experience. I wanted to see the U.S. to maybe to get a professional experience in U.S. as well. And at that point, and it still kind of feels that the U.S. was like the farthest away from all that I was used to. Because with my job at Roland Berger, I was working and traveling a lot in Europe, so I felt like I have a pretty good understanding of the business environment in Europe, and I just wanted to try something else.
Okay. I have another question, because I personally think that we always think about something that you should have done better. And I want to know, in your career or in your life, what is it exactly? What do you think you should have done better?
Yeah, it's it's always a struggle. At least for me, and living in San Francisco, it's a very, very innovative place. where many people, they choose to go with small companies and maybe to even start a company. And it's your career trajectory if you work in a small company versus a multinational with thousands and thousands of employees is very, very different. But you know, coming from my background of consulting, always working with these companies, I probably didn't do enough thinking in terms of the implications of working for big companies, like for a long period of your time, versus small companies, because I just didn't know at that time. So I think that's a thing too, like asking questions and trying to understand from different angles. But at that time I didn't know, so I just went with whatever I knew. I just assumed that working in a big company is like, I mean, it is interesting, but the kind of responsibilities and the kind of opportunities that you get in a big company are different than what you get in a small company. So I just wish that I had talked to more people with those experiences and understanding the differences.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
There. I will try to ask you something in English, but
thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
If I understood well, you teach innovation and entrepreneurship in Stanford. That's right? That's what you said?
I study.
You study. But okay, no problem. The question is the same. Did you do you ever have an idea to create your own businesses or your own? Do you ever have an idea to create your something innovating, something like this?
Yeah. Yes, like a few times. I don't know if it's super innovative, but as part of this, as part of this class that I'm taking at Stanford, I'm working with 2 other colleagues, and we're trying to develop a platform for real estate investment in the U.S. So for U.S. real estate investment for Asian investors, because I think this has been done for like U.S. residents, but never before for foreigners. And then also, like real estate investment, you usually invest like you buy a property. But what we're trying to do is to democratize it in a way that if you want to invest as little as $1,000 as a South Korean investor, then you can use this platform and just own a share of that property that's like equivalent of $1,000. So we're working on that idea right now. And we'll see if it goes anywhere or not, but also going through the process of developing like a pitch and talking to potential investors about this idea and trying to get venture capital money for it. It's a process, it's a journey, so it's super interesting.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, I have a question. Sorry if my English is not very well. I'm just asking, do you feel accomplished, or you want to improve more and more about your knowledge? How do you feel now, I mean, professional?
In terms of knowledge or professional experiences?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, so I feel generally good. I think as long as I'm learning stuff, I feel good and I don't get bored as long as I'm learning. And there have been some cases of like me being in a team within this Genentech company that I'm working for right now. And then I just feel like I learned everything that I had to learn there, and then I moved to a different team. But I think this is talking about the pros and the cons of being in a big company versus a small company. With a big company, if you have the option to move from one department to another. So then I moved from market research and analytics. I moved to like insurance strategy for healthcare, and now I work in marketing and strategy. So even within the company, I had all of these different experiences. So I feel lucky that after 4 years, I'm still learning, which is you have to also figure out for yourselves what it is that that makes you be like interested in a topic. If it's continuous learning, then you're probably like me, that you want to spend maybe like 1 year or a couple of years in each place and then move around. So from that point of view, I feel I'm lucky. The thing that I am not that happy about sometimes, it's what happens with these very big companies is that they're hard to navigate. It's hard to get promoted. There are so many different layers, and it's hard to know everyone. So there's a certain type of I think personality and a certain knowledge that you need to develop in order to be successful in a big company. And sometimes you need to be patient and just wait for things to happen. Sometimes things have a certain course. It takes years, so sometimes I'm not super happy about that, which is why I'm thinking about small company, big company. Sometimes I'm going back and forth.
And now you're looking for more and more challenges, or you think it's stopped, or you want to be focused on something, or you are looking for more and more challenges?
I think. Like with every job that I change, I think it's a new challenge. I started my current job within the company about a year ago, but I still feel like I have things to learn, so that's good. But in terms of, if your question was more around like future career development, I do have an objective just based on everything that I've seen so far. I'd be more interested in general management at some point, and in order to become a general manager, you need to have a good understanding of the different functions in the company. So like moving around now with marketing, thinking about getting some sales experience. But I definitely see them as challenges. But it's nice when you have the option to move around like that.
Good evening. I see that you did a lot of studies about entrepreneurship and stuff. After that, did you launch your own businesses? I mean, one of my preoccupations personally is that is it difficult to be an entrepreneur working for a big company, for example?
Yeah, it's definitely, like time-wise, it's definitely more challenging. I think it's important to make sure that you have the support of your company. And, like even big companies, they are looking for entrepreneurship. It's just that they don't call it that way. So they say entrepreneurship is like external to a big company, and then they have a different term for a big company. It's called intrapreneurship with an I. But that's to say that they're always looking to innovate and improve stuff within the company, which is the reason why they are supporting me in these studies, and they're actually paying for these studies for me at Stanford to do this, because I think the thinking is that I'm going to take some of the ideas from Stanford and then apply them internally in the company and bring some innovation and transformation there.
So is the company will pay for the study?
Yeah.
La leçon à en tirer, premièrement, c'est peut-être aussi de se dire que des fois, mieux qu'une augmentation de salaire, il vaut peut-être mieux demander à l'entreprise de vous financer de la formation, parce que à la longue, avec le diplôme et le label que vous obtenez, le salaire, il augmente par lui-même, de facto. Et vous pouvez vous faire payer des formations que vous ne pourriez peut-être pas vous payer par vous-même si vous deviez les financer sur vos fonds personnels.
Did you launch some businesses? personally, did you launch some businesses?
If I launched some businesses? Yeah, so I did. I launched a business in Romania that I'm going to talk about a little bit. It's a private school in my hometown, and it's for kids aged 6 to 11 years. It's called Daria School, and my mom is managing it. So we launched that about a year ago. And yeah, it's been very interesting because I also feel like then going back to my principle of doing something good, it feels good to be able to do something for my hometown and for my family too.
Another question here, and after this set of questions, you go on with the presentation.
I still have like 2
Okay.
Hello. First of all, I wanted to say congratulations for your background, and I wanted to know also if have you met any difficulties as a woman in this field?
Yeah, I think it's I think it's interesting because when I was a student and also with my first job in Romania, I didn't notice that. I didn't actually notice if there was like a different distribution, like different number of women versus men in the university. And I'm super happy to hear from your professors that your school is quite balanced, or even slightly more women in this school. So, in the beginning, I didn't notice that. And then I was telling Monsieur Cassier here that when I went to HBS, we were celebrating the first year with 40% of women in the MBA student population, and that was extremely high for the school. I think in the past it had been like for the past 10 years it was somewhere around 25%. So that was really great. And then in my company right now, I think the company recognized that there is an imbalance in the workplace, and especially later in life with family responsibilities. And it's a very interesting thing, but they came up with this objective that we need to have the same number of women in leadership positions as men. And so every year we have about 10 different objectives that we need to achieve as a company. And then our performance, our bonus and everything is based on that. And the other objectives are very much research related, because we're a research company, we're a healthcare company developing new medicines. But this one is about number of women in leadership positions. And we didn't manage to achieve the objective. So then the entire company of 90,000 employees, we all got penalized. We all got our bonuses decreased because of that. But that happened a few years ago, and now they made a lot of progress in terms of that, and they're making a conscious effort to hire more and more women. So I think we're headed in the right direction. I would love to hear your experience in Europe too. Thank you for all your questions so far, and we'll have some chance for more questions when I finish the presentation. I only have a few more slides. I just wanted to show you. Okay, so this is to talk about one of the reflections there, that it's good to give back, and I think also giving back, it doesn't have to be under a certain form or another. It's just whatever feels good for you, and it also doesn't have to be like pro bono work, like work for free. but it's whatever brings you joy. And for me, some of it is having a social impact. So I've been working with both the World Health Organization as well as the World Food Program of the United Nations. And you know, I worked on topics such as making sure that people in sub-Saharan Africa, they have access to condoms and syringes, and that we can move production of these basic commodities or basic medical devices to that region to make sure that everyone has access to that. And then I also worked on micronutrients, because so many children, as you know, are malnourished. And so we worked on that. So that brings me a lot of joy, and I think it's something that I'm going to continue to do for the rest of my life, because again, I feel so lucky to have had all these experiences and all of this knowledge. And if I can help in any way, and especially lots of times is bringing your experience from the private sector and applying it to the public sector. So for example, with the micronutrients, the United Nations, the World Food Program, has been distributing micronutrients to these countries in a free distribution model. But then after some time, they realized that this is not sustainable long term. They just don't have the budget, they don't have the money to continue to do this. So then they called us, some business people, to think about what would it look like in the private sector. Can we sell these micronutrients in pharmacies and supermarkets, and then take a percentage of that and use it to pay for the free distribution to subsidize it? So that's what we did there. And then every year, so I'm part of the HBS Association, Association of Northern California Community Partners, which is really, it's an organization that partners with local institutions in the San Francisco Bay Area, and it's the same concept. Usually the institutions are like public institutions or maybe social enterprises. They're trying to do something good. They don't have big budgets to hire big consultants. So we work with them on a volunteering basis on topics that they need our support on. And then the Asia Leadership Track, so that's something that I did after my MBA. I took 3 months off before my first full-time position. And I went and I taught. I was a teacher in China and South Korea for the summer. And I was teaching to high school students and college students like you. And I was teaching leadership and really all the skills to start thinking about a career, to start putting together a resume, a cover letter, which is interesting because those of you with ties to Asia, you probably know this, but they're very, very focused on their academic achievements, and they don't have much time to think about professional career, and so this was for them to take the time to really think, what do you want to do in life? What do you want to become? How are you getting there? Let's help you to do that. So that was a super interesting experience. And these are some pictures from my time in Asia with the students. So what I would encourage you to do is think about what brings you joy, and how can you apply your knowledge, your education, your skills to a good cause in your local community or somewhere that you are something that you're interested in. Okay, and I think this is my last slide. We can open it up for questions again, but I've been talking a lot, and I just wanted to give you a tangible example of a week in my life. So how does it look like? And also, this is pretty recent. When I was putting together this presentation, it was probably 3 weeks ago, and it's inspired from my actual week 3 weeks ago. So these are, this is a picture of our patients at Genentech. Again, you'll hear more about this tomorrow if you can attend the class. But everything that we do at Genentech is for patients. We develop innovative medicines. We focus on cancer. About 80% of our research and development is on cancer medicines, trying to find treatments in oncology. And we do all of this with the patient in mind. Our mission really is to do now what patients need next. Because now is now, and next is, as you know, it takes a very long time to develop these treatments, to discover them, and to bring them to market. So a big portion of my day-to-day life, it revolves around patients, talking to patients, going to their homes. I was recently in Montana with one of our blood cancer patients, and I spent 2 days in his house, meeting his family, meeting his wife, trying to understand his journey, his life since he was diagnosed about 2 years ago. And really, he was one of our patients enrolled in one of our clinical trials, and trying to understand how the treatment impacted his life and all of that. Then that big country comes with a lot of travel. So in October, I was it was kind of an unusual month for me, but I was traveling quite a lot. I think I was home for maybe like 5 days, which is, it's a bit excessive, but that's to say that travel is a big part of my life as well. I couldn't find a better picture there, but that's the real estate business that I was telling you about. It's a very, it's a serious, it's like a school assignment, but it's a real life, a very serious assignment, and we have mentors that we meet with every week. They are venture capitalists, and then we have professors who are very open to office hours, and then I have my team that I'm working with, so that involves a lot of work. And then this is not a real picture. This is not me with my husband, but I recently got married about 2 months ago. And thank you so much. And we also, there's a lot of interest in the...
No, I think the main purpose is that you found time to marry. Recently got married, and then recently bought a house in San Francisco. So that's to say, family life. I also have family life in San Francisco. So trying to spend more time with my husband. Then also talking about family. You're probably, I mean, you're younger than me, but we're all experiencing the same thing, and that's aging parents. It's a true fact. They're not getting younger, and things happen. And especially my entire family, they're in Romania. And it can be really hard when you live so far away. There's actually there's no direct flight between San Francisco and Bucharest. So every time I travel back, it's usually 17 hours. It takes 17 hours to get home. And you know, I've been... My parents have had some health challenges lately, which resulted in me traveling back to Romania every 3 months, every 3 to 4 months for the past 3 years, and it's hard. But it's also important to have to have a company that understands that, and I feel like I'm lucky because my company is a healthcare company, so every time there's a health challenge or challenge with the parents, they understand and they give me the time off, which is it's very important.
And then the school that I just told you about, Daria School, so that's, we launched about, as I said, about a year ago, but still there are things that we tweak here and there. We do a lot of social media marketing, and then we hired more people, more children came this year, so we had to hire more people. So I try to keep an eye on that as well. And my mom here, she's driving, she's managing the day-to-day business, but I like to be involved as well and to help however I can. And then you may wonder what this is. So this is SETI, is the search for extraterrestrial information, and it's based out of the San Francisco Bay Area, and it's one of the pro bono projects that I'm doing with HBS alums this year, and it's a clear example of how we apply private sector knowledge to public sector. So the SETI has been looking for aliens basically for a long time, but they have challenges in terms of funding, and they're not for profits, and they're not business people per se, they're scientists, and they don't like to think about that, but they kind of brought us along, and we're trying to find a sustainable model for them going forward to make sure that their innovation, their work continues to be done. So that's, although I don't know anything about aliens and that kind of stuff, but I think that's the beauty of our business knowledge, is that it can be applied across the spectrum. So that's what we're trying to do there. And then wellness. So I think it's really important for all of us to, when you have a very busy schedule, like I'm sure many of you here have that, it's really important to do whatever makes you happy, whether that's like working out, eating well, going for a run, and other things like spending time with friends. Whatever makes you feel good, I think it definitely helps. So I think I'm gonna stop here, and I'll open it up for questions again. And this was my last slide. So, and if you have, I know we have a cocktail hour after this, so please don't hesitate to come and talk to me also.
Est-ce que vous avez encore des questions? Oui. On va prendre 10 minutes, puis après vous finirez de discuter avec elle autour d'un verre, ça sera plus sympa.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. My question is, does the position that you have now is what you dreamed of when you started your study?
The position that I have now
is what you dreamed of when you started your study?
Okay. No, actually, that's a very good question, because it's very different. When I started my first studies in international economic relations, that's basically kind of you can become a diplomat if you pursue a certain route. So I think that's what I wanted to become in the first place, and then maybe within the economic mission of an embassy, because I was doing economic studies. And then it changed, and it became more like business. So it's different. However, I think your first intuition of whatever you want to pursue first, I think it goes with you throughout your life, because I think that's related to the work that I'm doing with some of the social impact enterprises, as well as the United Nations. I think it's a little bit in that direction of international relations and diplomacy, and I'm trying to still have a little bit of that in my life, even if I'm not doing that now.
Hello. So you start your study in Bucharest, and then you go in France and in USA. All these countries have different way to learn or to make lessons. And for you, which one is the most appropriate to learn and to our society?
I don't know if that's a tough question. I don't know if I have an answer to your question, but I do think that that people are a little bit different, and then companies also, like cultures and companies are a bit different in each place. So that's to say that I think you definitely benefit from having both experiences if you have that opportunity. Just spend. You already have the European exposure. If you can spend a few years in the US and get that type of experience, and maybe then bring it back to Europe, which is what I think I will do at some future point, I think that's always regarded very highly in the corporate world and among peers. Yeah, that's what I would say. But then. In terms of like specifics for work, I think there are certain industries, such as consulting, that are very similar across continents, because these companies, these big consulting companies, they work with big companies like multinational companies, and then the multinational companies are also, they don't really have a nationality, they're across the globe. So then it's more similar. But I think depending on the industry, you may end up in a place that's local, very local. And even within, so that's like Europe versus the US, but even within the US, there are so many differences, for example, between the East Coast and the West Coast culture. And the West Coast people always say that East Coast, like New Yorkers, they work more and they work longer hours. So there's like, I think the best advice that I can give you is just expose yourself to as many different environments as possible.
Alors, des questions? Oui.
Hi again. Because you moved quite a lot, I want to know, do you think that in the future, maybe not next year, but maybe in 10 years, do you think that you would attack the Asian market or African market? Do you think that you should move, or do you still plan to stay in the US?
Yeah, it's funny because we were talking about this earlier today, and I do plan to move again. But this time it would probably be back to Europe, because I do think that it's interesting to bring some of the US experience to Europe as well, and also because my family, a big part of my family is still in Romania. So it's just, I think, in terms of decisions, you just have to make the best decisions at the right, like whatever time point. And sometimes it's all about career, like it was when I moved to Boston to go to Harvard. And then sometimes it's career and family, like my potential future move back to Europe, it would have to do with a global career, but also being closer to my family. So I think depending on your priorities in life at that time, the decision may look different.
Bien. Ok, ben le mot de la fin, avant d'aller vers d'autres cieux un peu plus roboratifs. Daria, mulțumesc frumos pentru acest prezentație și prezența.
Thank you.
J'ai fait 34 voyages en Roumanie, il fallait bien que j'apprenne 3 mots quand même. Bon. And thank you. We are very proud, very honored that you accept to mentoring this promotion of students. And we don't want you to leave France without a small present and a piece of the school with you in the US. So let's have this present. Et pendant qu'il lui offre ce petit cadeau, Donc de la part de l'école et puis de tous les étudiants et tous les administratifs, les enseignants. Et donc demain matin, comme elle en a parlé, juste une dernière minute, demain matin elle en a parlé, il y a à 10h30 avant de ressauter dans le train puis dans l'avion, Daria nous fait le plaisir de nous accorder 2 heures de son temps pour vous faire une petite conférence pour ceux qui veulent. Alors il y a des diplômes dans lesquels c'est obligatoire et d'autres dans lesquels, si en fonction de vos emplois du temps, vous voulez venir écouter des réflexions stratégiques autour du domaine médical, etc. Ça se passera dans l'amphi Eulanier à partir de 10h30, donc vous êtes les bienvenus. Et maintenant, je vous laisse discuter avec votre future marraine autour d'un verre au foyer. Merci encore de votre présence. Merci Daria.